Good day and welcome to Quilting with Don, episode 6. Yes, the final episode, as promised. In this episode, I'm going to bind the quilt, the Vista Boxes quilt that you saw me put together in the first 5 episodes. The main thing on this is going to be cutting the fabric, making the binding, and then sewing on the binding. It's that straightforward. I am going to follow the book I mentioned to you before. It's called Creative Quilt Bindings Template by Sewing with Nancy. And it comes with the book with step-by-step instructions on how to make several types of bindings and this really cool template which gives you very precise measurements for the fabric you're going to cut into strips. How I'm going to do this is, and if you recall from the not episode 6, I'm going to do this as a 2-color binding, which is called a reversible binding in the book. So for that, I'm going to use the white fabric, the same white fabric that I put throughout the background of this quilt. And then for the back, I'm going to use the same fabric that I used for the backing, the dark blue with the patterns. And I have a lot of extra fabric for both. And in fact, on that theme, with my white here, I've got quite a few extra bits, and there may be enough to use that, so I don't even have to cut into the large piece of 1 yard by wide back, 108 inches fabric. I might just have enough extras that I can leave that solid piece untouched. Then I remembered that I had my trimmings from when I made this quilt, and when I had it on the rack, I had on either side quite a width of wide back right here. Now, of course, it's sewn on one edge to the backing, to the batting, but this backing fabric, I think I have enough as well. Finally, how I'm going to sew this is a machine sewed on both sides, front and back. I am going to experiment with a piece of quilted fabric that Carolyn gave me. So I'm going to try both binding methods on this piece to see which I like better.
All right, I just started getting ready to cut fabric. And in fact, I have enough extra strips of the white from my leftovers from my previous trimming that I have enough. And Wobber decided he had to come out here and help me out. Hey, Wobbs? He's purring at me right now.
I've cut all the strips. My dark ones, per the book instructions, the backside fabric, are 2 inches wide. And then the front side, the white ones, are 1 inch wide. So to show you how I'm going to join the strips together to make one long blue and then one long white strip, following the instructions in the book, and also, this is not hard. So you can see here that I've got the blue inch strip coming in from the left here, 2 inches wide, and then I've got another blue inch strip. Now it's turned over, so you're seeing the back side of the other blue inch strip, and you can see that it's 90 degrees from the first strip. What you want to do is sew a diagonal line from where those 2 strips join there to where those 2 strips join here. So what I've done is used a fabric marker. It looks like this. There you go. It's actually not, it doesn't mark, it puts a little crease. But I creased the line I'm going to sew because I discovered the hard way that it's hard to keep this to go straight when you've got this much of a tail sticking out. And I also pinned it. So that's the concept. There we go. I've also changed the thread color to black because that way it doesn't show up as easily on the joined fabric. I had a lighter color before and I didn't like you could actually see the thread a bit. There we go. Line her up here. Should be it. Here's the joint. Perfection. Actually the fabric lines up very well, so that's a good process. I'll just keep doing that. Get all the strips sewn. Here it is here. So you can see it's 2-tone, and I folded it on itself. I've got about 380 inches. Time to press the binding in half because it starts off as 2.5 inches wide, which is correct, that's what it should be. And you fold it in half and press it so that it's 1.25 inches. So this one I'm going solo in. I didn't consult the quilting consultant. I figured I got this. And I already started doing it. So we're good to go. I've got the whole 400 inches of binding to the left. Oh, and I did have to add another about 10 inches to the binding because it wasn't quite long enough for comfort. So I did that, I added it, not a problem, and now I'm pressing it. There we go. All right. And all I'm doing here is moving along, and I line up the edges, and I got the lighter edge on top so I can easily see where I'm at. And I'm just pressing as I go. Simple as that. Yeah. Not bad at all. I have done my tests with the piece of quilted fabric, and what I did is create or make 2 binding strips that match what I've already done, and I sewed them with the methodology that I think I want to use, and I can say I had success. I top sewed the binding, wrapped it around to the back, and then what I did was then from the top again sewed in the ditch so that it actually would trap the back side of the binding, and it worked. It worked very well. So let me show you how well it came out. Alright, so here is the binding, and I wrapped it around, and then I stitched in this ditch here to trap the back side, and you can see here how it is trapped, right? Now you also see that I used the same color thread top and bottom, and I don't like that look. So the next test run I did it again, just on the other side, and this time I used a dark blue thread for the bobbin, that would then, when I top stitched the back side. And I stitched in the ditch, and then when I fold it over here, you'll see, you can't see the thread because it's hidden in the dark blue fabric, so it worked very well. All right, here goes. Oh, fuck. That's Caroline in the background using her machine.
No, you can start now. You said
all right.
F word, so I had a moment.
All right. Okay. Let's do this. Nice and slow, see? Nice and slow. Little check, 1/4 inch check.
Yes, boy.
And this is why I can't finish my quilt. No, we didn't. Look at this boy.
I have sewn the binding all around the top side of the quilt. And I'll show you. I've also ironed it around to the back. Haven't done any sewing yet the second time around. But I'm zooming in here. So there you can see the binding, because it's outlining the color a little bit there. And there's the back side, which then as you move around, there you can see how it folds around to the back and blends. Well, you see my hand there, but it blends right in. It's quite nice. We're now into hopefully the last stretch of binding my quilt, and I'm now working on the back side of the quilt. I gave this quite a bit of thought last night. Also talked to the quilting consultant extraordinaire, Carolyn. And I've determined, and I've just tested it, that the best way for me to make sure that the back side of the binding is exactly where it needs to be is to glue it. So let me show you. All right? You'll see here, I've wrapped around the binding to the back, and in fact here I've glued it down. Why? Because what you need to make sure, okay, it's a little messy here, but you need to make sure that when you fold the binding down, it covers completely the stitching line from the front. Because when you're going to stitch again from the front to tack down this binding, this is an indicator where that line is going to be. And if your binding has not covered that line sufficiently, it's going to miss, and then it won't be tacked down. So what gluing does is allows me to make a nice, even binding and I have complete control of where it's going to fold over and then where it's going to sew. So that's how I'm going to do it, all right? So here we go. Oh, yeah, the other part is glue. I'm using, it's a kid's glue. It's equivalent to the Elmer washable kids glue. This one is transparent, but we got it while we were in Belgium, actually. But it's cool, and it washes out, and it works. So I've already done a test patch. So what you do is you glue, and then you iron to set it. Simple as that. So there we go. And what I'm doing is adding the glue roughly where the stitch line is, right? Because that's where I know it needs to glue. And then you glue, and you fold. Again, you're having control now of where it's folding. That's great. And then you iron to set it. It's as simple as that. Yeah. Until I'm right-handed here. But this, oh, no steam on the iron, obviously. I think. If it's water-soluble glue, which it is, you don't want the steam dissolving or dissolving the glue. But this works. I'm going in. Wish me luck. I glued this morning, I glued the binding all the way around this beautiful quilt. I've got the walking foot on the sewing machine. I've set the needle so it's dead center down the walking foot, and therefore I can see the ditch I'm going to sew in right through this wonderful small little gap in the walking foot. So theoretically, I can sew down the ditch, and I can go around the quilt. Down the ditch. Yes. Well, that's looking really good. And done. Completely done. Finished. The Vista Boxes quilt is quilted and bound. It is finished. I earned myself a wee whiskey. This is one of my faves. It's from Dalmore, and they've got this beautiful stag's head here, and it's a cigar malt. It's absolutely fabulous. Nice rich color to it. You can tell I've already had lots of it. There's not much left. And this is not our first bottle. It is fabulous. So I'm trying to put the glass here. Ah, wonderful. Put this here. Pardon me, a little tickle in my throat. So, this has been great. I'm going to come back, but for now I'm enjoying my Dalmore cigar malt and having a wee look at my beautifully bound quilt. It looks phenomenal. Cheers. Don't forget to stay tuned after this for the final summary of how much this cost, time and effort, a couple other details. But right now I'm going to show you how the binding came out. What you're seeing here is the binding. And look at that. There's the border, there's the binding in white. And you can see how it's just mildly stitched along the edge because that's the top stitch I did to grab the back side. And speaking of which, here's the back side. And you can see it. You can see the fine line that is the stitching that goes through the back side of the binding. So it came out really good. Very happy with this. This is, it's not hand sewn for the, so it's not as perfect as if I had hand stitched the back side. But it's a lot quicker, and I think it came out great. Take a moment to look at this beautiful Vista Boxes quilt. I'm going to now offer you a few costs involved with this quilt. First of all, and I'll throw it up on the screen, let's take a look at the time involved. Including the actual designing, how I was going to do this, through all the cutting of triangles and then sewing them, adding the borders, throwing it on the long arm, and finally, what you just saw with the binding, 134 hours. Nearly half of that was just sewing the darn triangles. So there you go. Now the next thing you'll see on the screen is how much my materials cost. I did most of my purchases through Missouri Star, so I costed them in US dollars. So you see two columns here because everything I actually purchased in the native dollars is in the green. So you can see that I bought the pattern and the thread in Canadian dollars, and I converted it similar to what it would have been in US dollars, roughly. So you can see that my total costs before even considering if I'd had somebody else do the long arming, because you know I did, but Carolyn didn't charge me. But it would have been almost 500 Canadian dollars, 365 American dollars just for the materials alone. Those are my costs. Carolyn tells me a quilt this size, she probably would have charged around $300 to anyone else, 300 Canadian. So I converted that to American, but Carolyn also tells me American prices maybe would have been around 300 US dollars for the same thing. Don't know. I'm not speaking from expertise here. But therefore you can see that this quilt, if I'd done all the work but sent it away to be quilted, we're almost $800 Canadian. So finally, I'm going to throw on the screen here a real quick flash of the other things that I had to use to make this quilt. Yeah, it wasn't just materials and time and machines. I had to use a lot of Carolyn's equipment that she had acquired over the years. And you know, some of them are pretty obvious, right, from cutting and ironing and sewing. Some of them not so obvious. Washable glue, seam ripper. You know, that was a lifesaver, let me tell you. And so on. So you can see this whole list here. And of course, finally, the bottom thing on the list is it is the most important thing on that list for me. And that was having all the guidance and expertise offered by somebody like Carolyn, in my case, yes, Carolyn, who could get me going and could keep me on the straight and narrow path to get this done. Because without that expertise, I can't even imagine how I would have finished this. So, in summary, really happy the way this came out. Exciting. Will there be another Quilting with Dawn? Yes, there will. I think there will. Not for maybe another year or two, so don't stay by your computer waiting for the next episode. It's going to be at least a year before I tackle another quilt. I got other things to do. But I really enjoyed this, and I'm going to keep my eyes open for the next pattern that catches my attention, like this one did. And I'll make it happen. So, thank you for staying tuned, if you're still with me, for all 6+ episodes. I hope you got something out of this. As you know, it was great for me. I'm hoping you learned a bit too. And if not, at least you had a good chuckle along the way with some of my foibles and mistakes. And there were a few. So, glad you tuned in. And happy quilting. Cheers.